You shouldn't look at me like that. Her voice was soft, almost scolding, but her eyes didn't move away from mine. She stood so close I could see the faint tremble in her hand as she adjusted the bracelet on her wrist, as if that tiny act could distract from the space between us shrinking. She was older, graceful in a way that wasn't rehearsed, the kind of elegance that lived in her posture, the tilt of her chin, even in the tired smile that never fully reached her eyes. She carried herself like someone who had learned to hold the world steady, but tonight, in the low hush of the room, she wasn't steady at all. And maybe that was my fault. I didn't speak right away. My throat tightened, and instead I watched her fingers brush the edge of the table, lingering, as though the wood could anchor her. I wanted to say something ordinary, casual, anything that would break the silence, but my chest betrayed me with the rhythm of a heartbeat too fast, too loud. The air carried the faint scent of her perfume, warm and familiar, like citrus cut through with something deeper, something that stayed long after she'd walked past. It wasn't just the scent that made me restless, it was her. Always her. Why not? I finally asked, my voice lower than I meant. Her lips parted, but the answer didn't come. She exhaled instead, slow, measured, as if she could push the words back down before they escaped. Then she looked at me the way someone looks at the sea when they know they shouldn't dive in, longing wrapped in hesitation. You're making me weak, she whispered, almost ashamed of the confession. The words hit me harder than I expected. Weak, the last thing I'd ever thought of her. She was the woman who never faltered in front of anyone, who always had a response, a solution, a way to walk away before anyone saw the crack beneath her poise. But here she was, telling me she couldn't stand firm. Not with me. Without thinking, I stepped closer. My hand brushed hers, just barely, enough to feel the warmth of her skin, the spark that leapt from that accidental contact. She didn't pull away. Then let me hold you up, I said, the words spilling out before I could weigh them. Her breath caught, her shoulders stiffened, and for a moment I thought I had gone too far. But she didn't move. She stayed there, her body turned toward mine, her eyes refusing to let go. Silence stretched, thick and trembling. I saw the way her lips pressed together, the way her throat worked as she swallowed down something unspoken. She looked at me like I was the last thing she needed, and the only thing she wanted. The room felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every shift of fabric, every drawn breath, every heartbeat that shouldn't be heard but was. My hand hovered near hers, waiting, aching, but not daring to close the gap without her. I shouldn't, she began, her voice trailing off into the stillness. I leaned in slightly, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin, but not close enough to touch her lips with mine. Not yet. Her eyes flicked to my mouth and back again, and I felt the weight of that glance like fire. And just as the silence thickened into something I couldn't escape, the sound of a door latch clicked open from down the hall. She froze. So did I. Her hand slipped from the table, brushing mine one last time, fleeting, unfinished. She turned her head toward the noise, but her eyes darted back to me, wide, conflicted, unspoken words suspended in the air between us. The sound of the door down the hall faded, leaving us in silence again. She exhaled, a shaky breath that almost sounded like relief. Then, without a word, she moved toward the couch, her hand brushing against the backrest as if she needed something to guide her steps. I stayed where I was, watching her, my pulse refusing to settle. She sat down carefully, legs crossed, the soft fabric of her dress falling just above her knees. When she finally looked at me again, it was different, softer, weighed down by something she hadn't meant for me to see. You don't know what you're doing, she said quietly, though there was no anger in her tone. I've lived long enough to know how this ends. I wanted to ask her how, but her gaze was fixed on the space between us, like she was seeing something else entirely, a memory, maybe. The faint line at the corner of her mouth deepened, not from a smile, but from holding back something heavier. Was there someone? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up to mine. There was always someone, she said. And then, there wasn't. The words hung in the air, unfinished, as if she had left pieces of herself in those gaps. A marriage that didn't last. A love that slipped through her fingers. Nights of silence in a house that once held laughter. I didn't know the details, but I didn't need to. I could feel the weight of them in her pause. I crossed the room slowly, not daring to close the distance too quickly. When I sat beside her, the couch dipped slightly, enough to make her shift closer without realizing. "You think I don't know what I'm doing," I said, forcing my voice steady. "But I do. Maybe not all of it, but I know what I want when it's sitting right next to me." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she let out a soft laugh, the kind people make when they're both touched and terrified. "This isn't simple," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're young. Too young. People would—" She trailed off, fingers tightening around the fabric of her dress. "People don't get a say," I replied, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. The age between us wasn't just years, it was a wall built from expectation, judgment, all the things she carried on her shoulders and I pretended not to feel. Still, the space between us was vanishing. She turned slightly, her shoulder brushing mine. I felt the warmth of her skin, the faint catch of her breath as she shifted closer, not intentionally, but not by accident either. I glanced at her, and for a brief second her eyes softened into something raw, something she usually kept locked away. My hand rose instinctively, brushing against her shoulder. The touch was light, hesitant, but enough to make her close her eyes, just for a moment. When she opened them, she didn't move away. The quiet stretched again, but it wasn't empty this time. It was full, of what we weren't saying, of what lingered in the space between a touch and a kiss. And though either of us leaned in, our bodies stayed too close, our silence too loud, our bond too undeniable to ignore. Her shoulder lingered beneath my hand, her eyes half closed like she was caught between surrender and escape. Then, her phone buzzed. A sharp sound in the silence. She jumped slightly, her body brushing mine before she reached for the phone on the table. The screen lit her face, the glow outlining the faint crease in her brow as she read the message. Her lips pressed into a thin line unreadable. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice low. She nodded too quickly. "Just a friend checking in." But she didn't move away. She kept the phone in her hand, not answering, not putting it down. Like she was waiting for me to retreat first. I didn't. The air between us thickened again. I could hear my own pulse, the steady rhythm of it loud against the stillness. Her perfume clung to the couch, sweet and sharp, and every inhale drew me closer to her without meaning to. "You should be careful," she said suddenly, her eyes flicking toward me, then away. "Someone could walk in. People talk." Her voice cracked on the last word, barely audible. I leaned forward slightly, catching her glance before she could turn away again. "Then let them talk." She froze. For a long moment, she just stared at me, lips parted, breath shallow. Then she shook her head, a faint smile pulling at her mouth. "You don't know what that means for me." Her hand shifted, almost by accident, grazing against my knee. I felt the heat of it through the thin fabric of my jeans. Neither of us moved to correct it. I wanted to close the distance. To lean in until her words disappeared and only the quiet sound of her breath filled the space. My hand inched forward, fingers brushing the back of hers. She didn't pull away. Her eyes lifted to mine, and everything slowed, her lashes trembling, her chest rising with shallow breaths, the faint part of her lips. And then, footsteps. We both stiffened. A voice carried faintly from the hall, closer than before. My hand pulled back reluctantly, her fingers curling into her lap like she had been burned. "Don't," she whispered, sharp but fragile, almost a plea. But the plea wasn't for me to stop, it was for herself. The footsteps faded, the voice passing by without entering. Still, she stayed rigid, her body angled just enough to keep the world from guessing. When she finally turned back to me, her face was pale, her jaw set. But her eyes betrayed her, they were still caught on mine, searching, wavering. "You make this impossible," she whispered, softer now, like she hated herself for saying it. I leaned closer, so close our foreheads almost touched, so close I could feel the warmth of her breath against my lips. Then stop fighting it, I said, barely above a whisper. Her breath hitched, and for a heartbeat we hung there, closer than ever, not kissing, not pulling away, trapped in a silence that felt more dangerous than any words. She avoided me the next day. No messages. No chance encounters in the kitchen. No lingering eyes across the room. She disappeared into her routines, polite but distant, like the night before had been erased. But it hadn't. I could still feel her breath against my lips, the almost of it. The weight of what almost happened pressed against me all day. When I finally found her again, she was on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, staring out into the evening. The air was cool, the kind that carried silence easily. She didn't turn when I stepped closer, but I saw her shoulders tense. "You're hiding from me," I said softly. Her laugh was small, bitter. "You think too much of yourself." I took another step, close enough that the wooden boards creaked under my weight. "Then look at me and say that." Slowly she turned. The porch light cast a warm glow across her face, catching the lines of worry around her mouth, the tired beauty in her eyes. She didn't speak. Instead, she whispered, "I can't do this." I swallowed hard. "Then why do you keep standing here with me?" Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. I stepped closer until the edge of my hand brushed her arm. The fabric of her sleeve was cool, but her skin beneath it was burning. "You make me feel," she started, then shook her head, frustrated. "You make me feel things I thought I buried. And I don't know if that terrifies me or—" Her voice broke. I reached up slowly, giving her time to move away. She didn't. My fingers brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, tucking it gently behind her ear. She closed her eyes, her breath catching at the touch. When she opened them again, there was no mask left. Only raw fear tangled with something deeper. "You shouldn't want me," she whispered. "Not like this. Not when people will judge me." I leaned in, my mouth close enough that my words touched the shell of her ear. "I don't care about them." Her eyes fluttered shut, her body swaying just enough that she leaned into me, her forehead almost brushing my shoulder. My hand slid down her arm, stopping at her wrist, holding it lightly as though she might pull away at any second. Her pulse raced beneath my fingers. "You're younger than my regrets," she murmured, voice trembling. "And yet, you're the only one who sees me." The confession hung heavy in the night air, impossible to take back. I lifted her chin gently, forcing her to meet my eyes. Her lips parted, her breath warm against my face. For a moment, there was nothing else, not the creak of the porch boards, not the cool air, not the fear of being seen. Only us, teetering at the edge. And just as I leaned in, just as her lips hovered a breath away from mine, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the silence. Her eyes widened, but she didn't move. Neither did I. We froze there, a heartbeat away from the point of no return. I hadn't expected to see her at the cafe that evening. Not here, not now, not after yesterday's silence. She was sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, shoulders hunched like she carried the weight of the world alone. The dim light caught the strands of hair falling loose from her bun, softening her face. When she noticed me, she froze. Not with anger, but hesitation. Fear. "You came," she said softly, almost a question. I shrugged, sliding into the chair opposite her. "I wasn't going to stay away." Her eyes flicked around nervously, and I followed the movement. A man at the next table, a mutual acquaintance, was looking our way, phone in hand. My stomach sank. "He knows," she whispered, barely audible. "He saw us yesterday. He told someone." Her fingers twitched around the mug, betraying her calm tone. I felt the pull in my chest, the same draw that had kept me near her from the start. "I don't care," I said quietly, leaning forward. "Not about him. Not about anyone." Her gaze flickered to mine, and I noticed the tremor in her lips, the way her hand shook slightly as it traced a circle on the mug. She leaned forward, closer than she should have, until our knees brushed under the table. I shouldn't. She started, then bit her lip, swallowing the rest. I wanted to reach across, take her hand in mine, but I hesitated. Every fiber of my body screamed to close the gap. Instead, I let my fingers hover just above hers. She didn't pull away. Not entirely. Her pulse throbbed beneath her skin, and the heat radiating from her sent a wave of warmth through me. You're reckless, she whispered, shaking her head. You have no idea what you're doing to me. And yet you let me, I countered, my voice low, near a murmur. Every time. Even when you tell me not to. Her eyes softened, and for a fraction of a second, her walls fell away. Her shoulder brushed mine again. Innocent? Not innocent? I couldn't tell, and I didn't want to. I shouldn't want this, she admitted finally. I've kept my distance for months. Years, maybe. And you. Her hand shifted, almost brushing mine again. You make it impossible to stay away. The words hit me like fire. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached out, hovering close to hers, desperate but restrained. She didn't pull away. I'm not going to pretend, I said, leaning closer, my breath brushing her cheek. Not anymore. Whatever people think, whatever they know or don't know, I want this. I want you. Her lips parted slightly, the tiniest hitch in her breath betraying her control. She leaned forward, closer than ever, just as the door to the cafe opened and a gust of cold air swept through, drawing her slightly back. Her eyes searched mine, torn between fear and desire. Decide, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Decide if you'll fight it, or if we'll stop pretending. And just like that, the choice hung between us, heavy, impossible, electric. The room was quiet except for our breathing, uneven and sharp in the space between us. She stood just a step away, her hand lightly brushing the back of the chair, fingers curling like she wasn't sure whether to move closer or run. I couldn't move first, couldn't speak first. Every inch that separated us felt electric, like the air itself was holding its breath. You don't have to, she started, voice trembling, almost a whisper. Yes, I do, I interrupted softly, taking a half-step closer, feeling the warmth of her body before my hand even reached her. Her eyes widened, and she swallowed hard, her lips slightly parted. Her fingers brushed mine almost by accident, a touch so light it could have been ignored, but it wasn't. I held her gaze, watching her pulse flicker beneath her skin. Every movement was a confession, leaning in, not pulling away, the way her breath hitched when I shifted closer. I can't, she said again, but this time her voice wavered, betraying desire she wouldn't admit. Then let me, I whispered, my hand rising slowly to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. The tip of my fingers grazed her temple, the warmth of her skin sending a jolt through me. She shivered slightly, and that tiny tremor broke the last bit of restraint I had left. I closed the remaining distance, foreheads almost touching, breath mingling, every second stretched into an eternity. I don't want to hurt you, she murmured, a shadow of doubt in her eyes. You're not, I said. I've waited for this. For you. For us. I'll take whatever this is, however messy it gets. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time, she didn't pull back. Her hands hovered at my chest, uncertain, trembling, yet not moving away. I felt her heartbeat, fast and erratic, echoing the rhythm of my own. I shouldn't, she whispered, almost to herself. But I can't stop. That admission, raw and jagged, hung in the air between us. I cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheeks, letting her feel the steadiness in me that she didn't trust in herself. You don't have to stop, I said, voice dropping lower. Not with me. Not tonight. Her breath hitched again, and she leaned slightly into my touch, just enough to close the space without breaking the tension entirely. For a long moment, we stayed there, inches apart, trembling, alive, utterly human. No words could capture it. No decision could be undone. And in that fragile, electric pause, we understood each other fully. She tilted her head toward me, eyes glistening with something unspoken, and I felt it, The surrender, the recklessness, the messy perfection of it all. We were on the edge. Finally together. The night had settled softly around us, quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. She leaned against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself be still. I wrapped my arm around her, hand brushing along her back in gentle circles, feeling the rise and fall of her breath against me. The tension that had bound us for weeks melted into this simple closeness. No words were needed. The unspoken understanding between us said everything. "You're warm," she murmured, her voice low, almost shy. "I thought I'd get used to the cold nights alone. I didn't expect this." "You don't have to get used to anything," I said, voice quiet, deliberate. "I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." She shifted slightly, hand finding mine and intertwining our fingers. The gesture was small, almost ordinary, but it carried the weight of months of longing, hesitation, and risk. Her grip tightened for a moment, then relaxed, as if testing the truth in my words. "I was afraid," she admitted softly, tilting her head up to rest her forehead against mine. "Afraid of what people might say, afraid of losing myself in this." "And did you?" I asked, brushing my thumb across her knuckles. She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and wonder. "I think I was afraid of losing control. But with you, I don't feel lost. I feel found." The words struck me like they were meant only for this quiet room, only for us. I leaned in, brushing my lips gently against her forehead, a kiss that carried tenderness, reassurance, and everything we hadn't been able to say aloud. Her body relaxed fully against me, the walls she'd held up for decades crumbling, piece by piece. She pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my heartbeat, and for a moment, everything was simple, just us, just now. We stayed like that for a long while, no hurry, no interruptions, the city lights casting soft shadows through the window. Her hair brushed my cheek as she shifted slightly, and I inhaled the faint scent of her perfume, warm and lingering, grounding me in the moment. Finally, she looked up, eyes catching mine, glimmering with quiet certainty. "I don't care about anyone else. Not the age difference, not the opinions, nothing matters but this. Us. Us," I echoed, sealing the word with a gentle squeeze of her hand. The rest of the night passed in silence that spoke volumes, soft laughter, quiet whispers, fingers intertwined, shoulders touching, foreheads leaning together. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, it was messy, human, and perfect in its imperfection. At last, we didn't have to hide. We didn't have to hesitate. We simply existed together, fully present, fully alive. And that was enough. Engagement questions for YouTube. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?